Welcome to our fourth craft lesson in the David unit, and this is our last David unit. Today we'll be looking at how, in spite of everything, David was a man after God's own heart. God loved David. And so I thought it was important that we have a heart in our piece of art today. We're going to do a sculpture. And this looks like a strange sculpture, but it's after a famous artist named Giacometti. And we're going to have fun with it, I think. The nice thing about it is you can move him around a little bit. I've given him both a lyre or harp. You can do that. I've given him a crown. You can do that if you want. But the main thing is that you have David and the heart that God loved so much. Let's get started. All right, let's see what's in our bag to make our sculpture this week. Okay. This piece of wood with our wire armature. That's a word that means sort of a base structure for a sculpture. So we have a wire armature, and the fun thing about this is you can bend it, you can tilt it over, you can twist it left or right, but to start out with, I'm just going to stand him up straight, and I've given him a label. I've named him David because what we're making is a sculpture of David. And we're making our sculpture, I've given you a piece of paper here, after the artist's Giacometti. And he does these beautiful bronze sculptures that sell for millions of dollars, that are very slender figures with not much detail. And I thought that would be a perfect thing to imitate as we make our sculpture of David today. So, give me 1 second, we'll pull out the rest of the items. Oh, lots of foil. And down in the very bottom is a heart on a piece of wire. All right, let's get started.
Giacometti proves himself decades just prior to World War II as a very talented image maker, and works first in the Cubist idiom and then develops into a Surrealist idiom. After World War II, he creates an entirely new visual vocabulary focused on the relationship between the figure and space. La Place is Giacometti's first multifigural sculpture. There are 5 figures in the sculpture, 4 male figures and 1 female. The male figures are in motion, and the female figure is in a passive state. The ambiguity of the sculpture is really one of its most successful moments. You stand in front of it, you come at different angles, you look at these figures, you try to read what's on their faces or why they're in this city square, and there is no answer. Giacometti constantly comes back to that space for its sense of both community and then its sense of isolation, because even in a city atmosphere, you also have this sense of the figure not connecting. La Place reveals the emergence of the walking man, which ends up being a very important motif throughout his entire career. We also have...
You'll notice in your bag you have several pieces of foil, and you may have to flip them over, but at some place on the foil, for instance, this one says feet. So this is where I think I will start. So this is just a messy, messy process, but fortunately this thin aluminum foil is very forgiving. So I'm just going to start by wrapping a little bit around this leg of my armature, and then a little bit around this leg of my armature. I'm just crushing and crinkling. And this is going to look amazingly similar to the bronze sculptures that Giacometti makes. I'm going to tear it a little bit more there, wrap it around and make some nice skinny legs. And then we're going to come up to the base of his belly, and I'm just going to kind of wrap into the belly there. And I'm actually going to tear a little bit of this foil so we can have an opening there where his belly is. And again, if you goof up on a piece, I suspect it's your family's has some extra aluminum foil if you don't like what yours looks like. But again, it's a very forgiving material to be using. So I'm just squeezing and wrapping there. All right, check back with me in a second and we'll do the upper part of his body. All right, so I've done a lot of squeezing here. I've got a nice skinny body for my David because we're following the look of the artist Giacometti. Now, if you look through your foil, you should see one that has two labels on it, head and belly. So I'm going to go to the place that says head and start wrapping this foil around the opening that makes the head of our sculpture. And again, crinkle it up, squish it in there. And then the belly, I've kind of torn it in there so you can have that opening. And there may be too much foil here. You may end up just ripping some off. But the nice thing is you can just move it around. You can see I'm making a nice solid head. If you're feeling really creative, you can try to shape a nose maybe. All right. The only thing that really needs to be open is the middle. All right, check back in a second. So you'll have two pieces of foil in your packet that say arm. You can see I've already done one here, but all I did for the arm was just fold this lengthwise, kind of roll it up fairly tightly, and then I squeezed it to make it even skinnier. And I'm going to take a portion of the end, maybe a couple of inches, and wrap around through the inside here to make sort of a shoulder. And then there's his arm hanging down. Strange looking man. Now, the last thing that we'll be doing that's important is attaching the heart that hangs down. So I've just used an old Christmas ornament hanger, and I'm going to just have it centered in the middle of this hole, and I'm just going to wrap it around this poor David's neck, but nobody will see it because it's the same color as the aluminum foil. So essentially, our sculpture is completed. But I've got some special things you can add if you would like. I've given you two pieces of gold foil. You can use one of them, you can use both of them, you can use none of them if you would like. But I just thought there are two things that are associated with David that make him remarkable. One is a crown, because he was a king, anointed by God, the second king of Israel. So for that, what I just did was fold up my gold, make it a little bit smaller, and you could wrap that around his head or form it into some other sort of crown. This aluminum foil is just wonderfully forgiving. You can just squish it and it will stay in place. The other thing David is noted for is his harp or his lyre. And this is the one I made earlier. And again, what I did with my foil was just, and here's a different way of rolling it. You can fold it in half and then fold it in half again and then fold it in half again and just make a nice little tubular shape. And again, what's beautiful about Giacometti sculptures is they're just very rough looking and it adds a beauty to it. And I just hook this together and then kind of give it a twist where it hooks. And then just sort of shape it the way a lyre might be shaped, with one straight side and then a part that's curved out. I've seen lyres in all sorts of shapes. And then once you get it the way you like it, all you have to do is fold David's hand around it and he can hold it. So we have our David sculpture now. the heart to remind us that David was a man after God's heart. Hope you've enjoyed this craft this week. We'll see you in a couple of weeks during Lenten season. So take care. Keep your hearts nice and pure. We love you and miss you. Bye.